Hi, I'm Ben, welcome to my channel. It's now September, a time of year that I really love because it means in the Northern Hemisphere the seasons are changing, the leaves are about to get delightfully crispy, and I'm back with another round of book news. I'll cover off some bookish headlines and new releases so that you feel well read this month. Let's get straight into the book news then. And first up, I'm sure we are all, as book lovers, extremely troubled by the avalanche of book banning efforts happening in schools and libraries across the US in particular. If you're not sure how this works, basically many institutions have procedures in place that let concerned parents question certain books being on shelves in schools, for instance if they think the content is a bit too grown up for their children. A small group of people have realised that they can take advantage of these procedures because in many cases a complaint means a book is taken off shelves while it's being looked into. And this small group of people have really gone to town, getting books by authors like Judy Blume, Maya Angelou, Leo Tolstoy and Ernest Hemingway removed from schools. There are 21 books from Stephen King that have been affected, prompting him to recently ask what we're all thinking: what the fuck? This has been particularly prevalent in the state of Florida, which has implemented a law that requires all schools to have a mechanism like this in place. And between 2021 and 2023, there were 3,135 book bans recorded. I still can't quite get my head around the cognitive dissonance it takes to harp on about free speech while also trying to ban books. But thankfully, some publishers and authors have had enough because they've brought a lawsuit against the state of Florida challenging that law I just mentioned. The suit is being brought by publishers such as Penguin Random House and Simon & Schuster, as well as authors including John Green and Jodi Picoult. We can only hope they succeed and that these book bans can stop. Book bans might seem like a particularly American problem, but sadly they are on the rise elsewhere too, including here in the UK. There was a survey recently carried out by the Index on Censorship, and they found that over half of the 53 librarians they spoke to had been asked to remove a book from their libraries, and in more than half of those instances, the books were taken off the shelves. What was particularly highlighted by this survey was that LGBT plus books were the main targets of censorship. And interestingly, while in the US we see people gaming certain processes, it seems like in the UK there is an absence of process that causes a lot of confusion, and then librarians end up under enormous pressure to act one way or the other and get it right. It is a crying shame that young LGBT plus people who may not understand themselves at the best of times will also not see themselves represented in affected libraries. It's pretty clear to me that protections need to be put in place, both for the sake of vulnerable readers and also for librarians, because before we know it, we're going to have a problem on a huge scale. Finally, in less depressing news, bookshop.org has launched a trade-in service. The service they've launched is called Bookloop, and if you've got a bunch of books hanging around that you don't want anymore, you can now trade them in for credit to use on bookshop.org. In case you've not heard of bookshop.org before, they're an online retailer set up specifically to support indie bookshops, and between 10% and 30% of every sale goes into an indie bookshop's coffers. The new scheme continues in that do-gooding vein because the books traded in won't be sold on Amazon-owned websites, and all of the accumulated royalties are going into a fund that will be used to support authors that need it. It will cover things like travel costs or childcare. There's an online valuation thingy where you can enter the ISBNs of your books, and you need to sell at least £5 worth of books in order to trade anything in. I've had a little play with it, and recent paperbacks get between £1 and £2, and recent hardbacks between £3 and £4. So you're not going to make millions from it, but it's a nice way to continue to support authors and indies, and to free up space on your bookshelves for new releases. Shh. On to prize news then, and there are no winners to report this month, but the Kirkus Prize finalists were announced, and it's a pretty interesting one. There's tons of Booker overlap, interestingly across 2 years of the prize. So you've got last year's winner Prophet Song on there, as well as long listees from this year, James and Playground. Rounding out the list is Margot's Got Money Problems by Ruthie Thorpe, Say Hello to My Little Friend by Janine Capo Crusay, and the upcoming new one from Louise Erdrich, The Mighty Red. And then hot off the press is the announcement of the Giller Prize long list, which I suppose is like the Canadian equivalent to the Booker. Again, there's some Booker overlap here with both Held and This Strange Eventful History making it, and then a bunch of books that, to be totally honest, I have never heard of before, and I can't really see any UK release for any of them, so they are probably out of my reach for now. But that may be a good thing considering the size of the book backlog I have at the moment. Do let me know if you have read any of these and what you made of them though. I've got a couple of dates for your prize diary as well. Maybe the most exciting upcoming announcement is the reveal of the long lists for this year's National Book Awards. They're coming out in a slow trickle between the 10th and 13th of September. The translated fiction is coming on the 10th, and the English language fiction comes right at the end on the 13th. I am considering doing some predictions for probably the English language fiction prize, if I can squeeze it in. Not sure I can at the moment, but if you'd like to see that, do let me know in the comments. And then on the 16th of September, the Booker will whittle down its 13 long-listed books to a shortlist of 6. I am just wrapping up my Booker reading. I'm on my penultimate book at the moment, and I will share my own personal shortlist ahead of the big reveal. Let's talk new book releases then, and this month is absolutely stacked, so I'm just going to dive right in and I'm going to run through these in order of UK release date, starting with Creation Lake, which comes out on the 5th of September. This is Rachel Kushner's new book. It's already been longlisted for the Booker. It's actually my current read, and it's about a woman who is a spy who is infiltrating a eco-terrorist group, or supposed eco-terrorist group. Really enjoying it so far, and there's a surprising amount of Neanderthal related facts. Also out on the 5th is The Fertile Earth by Ruthvika Rao. This is set in India, and it's a story about a pair of sisters who befriend a pair of brothers across class lines. Supposed to be very epic in scope. I fancied this for a Booker prediction, and although it didn't make it, still very excited to read this one. Rounding out the trio of releases on the 5th of September that I am personally interested in is a non-fiction called The Museum of Lost and Fragile Things, A Year of Salvage by Suzanne Joynson. This is a memoir in which Joynson reflects on her experience growing up in the north of England in what she now knows is a cult. The cult forbade having personal objects, and so I believe the book is structured around her acquiring replicas of belongings in order to rebuild her sense of belonging. I'm actually due to go to the book launch for this one tomorrow. I'm really excited about that, and I may share a few bits and bobs from the event on Instagram. So if you are not already following me and you're interested in seeing a few tidbits from that, then do follow the link in the description. On the 12th of September, there is a release that I'm sure supermarkets up and down the country are rejoicing over, and that is a new one from the king of cozy crime himself, Richard Osman. He's taken a break from his Thursday Murder Club series to start a new series called We Solve Murders, and it's about a older man and his daughter-in-law taking on some sort of mystery. It's got a cat on the cover, it's going to be super cozy, and it will get you through those long winter nights. Also out on the 12th is a new historical fiction from Tracy Chevalier. It's called The Glassmaker. It's set in 15th century Venice about a woman who defies gender expectations of the time to pursue a craft in glassmaking, I assume. On the 17th is the release of a new book by Ruman Alam called Entitlement. It's about a young black woman who's very ambitious and an older white billionaire. It's billed as a thriller. I have no interest in it though, because I just hated Leave the World Behind so much. But I know it's beloved by many other readers, so maybe you want to put this one on your radar. Then on the 19th of September, there is a huge team-up event in the Elizabeth Strout Connected universe, because her new novel Tell Me Everything comes out, and it features the first interaction between Olive Kitteridge and Lucy Barton. I have only read Olive Kitteridge, and I really liked it, but I am nowhere near prepared enough in Elizabeth Strout lore to tackle this book. But if you're a big Strout head, this might be all of your Christmases come at once. Also out on the 19th of September is a new one from Garth Greenwell called Small Rain, and I've put this down because the actual UK cover is really gorgeous. It's a David Hockney painting. This is about a man who is confined to a hospital bed after he has some medical emergency, and he reflects on poetry and music and meaning, and it sounds really introspective and interesting. In such a stacked month, it's quite hard to call one particular release out as the literary event of the month, but Intermezzo by Sally Rooney, released on the 24th, might just be it. This is a new one from the beloved Irish author, and it's about two brothers dealing with the fallout of the death of their father. I do feel like the Rooney hype train has died down a little bit, because everyone was going mad for this book a few months ago when ARCs were sent out to certain creators. But since then, things have been a little bit more quiet. The marketing machine is about to ramp back up though, because I think there are bookshop events scheduled, including some bookshops having artists on hand to make custom covers celebrating the release. So do look out for that in case there's one near you. Just a day later, on the 25th, is the release of a book I'm really excited to get to, and that is Placeholders by James Roseman. This is a book about home and homesickness, both in a literal sense of being away from the place that you grew up and call home, but also in a more metaphorical sense where your sense of home is completely changed by the fact that you lose someone who feels vital to it. It's supposed to be all about cultural identity and the power of love to transform our feelings of loneliness. I think it sounds great. On the 26th, we are getting the new one from Richard Powers, which is called Playground. It's already been longlisted for the Booker, and we will find out if it's been shortlisted before the release date. I've read this one recently, and I will be reviewing it in full soon, but it's basically like the overstory for the oceans instead of the forests. And it's got a sprinkling of AI in there too. I think if you liked the overstory, there's a very good chance that you will also enjoy this book. Also on the 26th, we're getting a trio of new translated treats. First up, A Sunny Place for Shady People by Mariana Enriquez, which has been translated by Megan McDowell. This is another short story collection from Enriquez, and I'm fully expecting it to be her usual mixture of creepy, body horror, gothic-y, gory tales that are used to say something about Argentinian society. It's another one that's getting a big marketing push, and there are a ton of events in the UK at least happening in bookshops across the country. So do look out for those. Then we've got the new one from Nobel Prize winner Olga Tokarczuk, which is called The Impusium, a health resort horror story. This is out on the 26th everywhere except apparently my local indie bookshop, where I managed to find a copy had been put out early. Interestingly also is that it is not translated by Jennifer Croft. It is actually translated by Antonia Lloyd-Jones. And I'll be really interested to know if this impacts the feeling of Tokarczuk's writing in any way. This is about a man who is suffering from tuberculosis, and he goes to some guest house to convalesce, and while he's there, there's lots of debates about human nature and war and democracy, and in the meantime, lots of weird stuff starts to happen around the guest house. I am super intrigued about this, and people I know who have read it already have been raving about it. Rounding out the releases on the 26th is a short story collection from noted film director Pedro Almodovar. This is called The Last Dream, and it's been translated by Frank Wynne. It apparently blends autofiction and comedy and absurdism, but I have to admit that it gives me pause for thought when on the book cover the author's name is bigger than the book's title. Trading on the name of the author rather than the content of the book just makes me question the quality of it. But on the other hand, Frank Wynne is a very notable translator, so I'm sure he wouldn't translate any old shit. Finally, on the 30th is the release of the new book from Louise Erdrich, The Mighty Red. This is apparently about a wedding taking place between two people who maybe don't belong together, and someone who wants to steal one of them back. I don't know too much beyond that, but if you were paying attention earlier on in the video, you'll know that it has just been named as a finalist for the Kirkus Prize, so that's a pretty good stamp of approval. There are a few paperback releases worth noting for this month. Held by Anne Michaels is a current longlistee for the Booker, and that's getting its paperback release later in the month. Northwards by Daniel Mason has had a huge glow up for its paperback release versus the frankly disgusting hardback cover it got in the UK first time around. Wellness by Nathan Hill is a chunkster that you may have been waiting for on paperback to save your arms some hard graft lifting it up. The Vaster Wilds by Lauren Groff is coming to paperback, which seems like a perfect autumnal read, and Family Meal by Brian Washington is also getting a floppy cover release. On to book deals, and I have to be honest, this month's Kindle deals are really not it. It's a pretty weak month. There are some gems in there though. If you are looking to round out your Booker reading, then Orbital is 99p, as is There by Tommy Orange if you want to read that before getting into Wandering Stars. A couple of other ones that caught my attention were Intimacies by Katie Kitamura and A Person is a Prayer by Amar Kalia, which I have a copy of and still really want to read. I am annoyed at myself that I haven't got to it yet. Books on Screen is also going to be pretty brief this month because there is only one adaptation I'm going to mention today, and I am deliriously excited to have learned of its existence. Colson Whitehead's The Nickel Boys has been adapted into a movie, and it's being tipped as an Oscar contender. I loved this book. It absolutely broke my heart. And I also love the Oscars, so I am ready to have my heart broken all over again. It's out in November, but I have just seen today that it's part of the programme for the London Film Festival in October, so I may get to see it sooner rather than later. We'll finish with the Feelgood story then, and this month's is something extremely cool because Penguin has installed a book vending machine in a secondary school in Scotland. Linlithgow Academy was chosen from more than 800 applicants points to receive the machine, which will stock books from Penguin's Lit in Colour reading lists. The machine is free to the students, who will receive tokens distributed by their teachers. Part of me is extremely envious that I did not have this at my school and that I don't have this in my workplace now. The other part of me, though, is scared for those precious books bumping their way down to the tray at the bottom. Just think of those poor dented corners. In any case, it's very, very cool, and I love that these teenagers are getting access to great literature, especially given some of the other news we've been covering today. That's all for this edition of The Month in Books. I would love to hear from you down in the comments what you thought of the news stories this month. I can imagine you are mostly going to be against book banning, but maybe you or your children have been particularly impacted by it. I'd also love to hear if there are any particular releases this month that you are very excited about, or if there are any that I missed. It's always handy to hear from people in the comments if there are notable releases that I didn't manage to cover. I really hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, it would be a great help for you to hit the like button. And if you're a new viewer and you'd like to see more from me, then hit subscribe. But until next time, toodles.